Social Security and Medicare have been called the third rail of American politics. Touch it, and your shot at re-election is fried. That's too bad, because the truth is that any serious discussion about these programs will have to address three key things, none of which are appealing to anyone: tax hikes, reduction in benefits, and delayed retirement. Politicians don't win re-election by talking about those things, so instead, they just do nothing. And they rationalize it by saying that if they lose an election, they won't be able to keep fighting for you and your children. I think common sense tells us what to make of that kind of logic. If politicians really cared, they'd stop the bleeding. They'd stop the spending. But they don't. Whether their patient lives or dies is of no consequence to them, just so long as they're reelected. The lecherous politicians who lied to us about funding Social Security and Medicare are the same ones who are now trumpeting free universal health care. Instead of pointing at their track record and laughing hysterically, we sit by and we listen receptively as though this time might somehow be different. When politicians want money, they traditionally write a bill that provides lots of overly optimistic details about the particular program that they want to fund. That's why it's so interesting that President Obama's request for $634 billion to be put into a universal health care reserve fund really doesn't come with a plan about where all that money will come from, who will be eligible for it, or how it will be spent. Common sense should tell us, given our experience with the Social Security Trust Fund, the very notion of another reserve fund is absolute insanity. What business owner would tell his employees that he's going to start a health care plan, require employees to pay into it, and collect their monthly premiums, all without ever telling them where the money was going or what benefits or exclusions would apply to the plan? That employer would go to jail. How many of us would make a down payment on a car that we didn't test drive, or a home we didn't know anything about? But that's exactly what the lunatics running Washington are now proposing, while simultaneously lying to us about the solvency of our Social Security and Medicare programs. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me for 70 years and bill me $100 trillion while I sit by and accept more of the same? Then shame on all of us for being ignorant and powerless Americans. If we fail to speak up and speak out against this madness, then we should be prepared to accept everything we get. Samuel Adams said, "Those who prefer the tranquility of servitude had best be prepared to crouch down and lick the hands that feed you." That advice is as relevant today as it was back then. And so are his closing words. May your chains sit lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were our countrymen. But that's not all. Act now and will also include a financial meltdown. Now that everything is beginning to crash down upon us, what do our politicians do? Oh, they promise us the way out of our crisis is to spend trillions of more dollars in borrowed funds. And we believe their lies because it feels good. We look to any good news to convince ourselves that our ship missed the iceberg and it's really not sinking. But it is sinking, and so are the lifeboats. The boat analogy is apt, not only because we are a stricken vessel that is sinking in deep, uncharted waters, but also because we've handed over control of our ship to a captain who works for a hostile, competing shipping company. The short-sighted political elite brag that China holds $724 billion in U.S. Treasury securities, making it the largest foreign holder of our debt in the world. They talk with pride about how China's willingness to buy our Treasury securities reflects their confidence in our economy and future. But what they fail to mention in their carefully orchestrated press conferences is that China is in a position now to dictate our future because it can create a crisis here unlike anything we've ever seen before. It wouldn't take one missile or an army battalion to do it. It would just take a decision by them to sell all of our debt or demand extravagant interest rates from us in exchange for continuing to buy it. Something that many are concerned is right around the corner. The Ivy Leaguers tell us, that'll never happen. If China sells our debt, it would collapse our economy, thereby eliminating the largest markets for their products, meaning a crippling of their economy as well. It's a very logical case. But by now, we should know that logic is in even shorter supply among our leaders than intelligence. Here's how this scenario might play out if it were happening in your home instead of Beijing and Washington. You lost your job months ago. You haven't told your wife about it. To keep up the illusion of your old life, you just run up all the credit cards, and you're having a hard time making even the minimum payments. You know your wife is going to catch on if you stop going out to dinner or shopping, so you just continue to eat out and buy nice stuff. Months pass, and now you run up more debt than you could ever pay off, even if you got a better job. To make matters worse, you've cheated on your taxes, and you were less than honest when filing your unemployment paperwork. Now things are starting to come apart at the seams. When bill collectors and the IRS auditors call, you blame them loudly in front of your wife, accusing them of incompetence in their record keeping. As things continue to get worse, you actually start to believe your own lies. I'm sure I'll win the lottery, you think to yourself as you hand over another $100 to the convenience store clerk. That would just solve everything.